This tutorial is brought to you by PhotoshopTalent.com. Hey there, and welcome to another Photoshop tutorial from IceFlow Studios. And in our last tutorial, we discussed chroma keying and how to remove a solid colored background from a foreground subject. And the reason I did that tutorial is to lead into this tutorial where we're going to be focusing on creating a magazine cover. Now in front of us we have an image of iJustine from TastyBlogsnack.com, and as you can see, the result of our last tutorial, she is on a transparent background. So we can change the background to whatever we want and it will be flawless. We can add an image in the background, we can add a pattern, a gradient, or just a solid color. So in front of us here, we have a preview of a magazine. Now, as you can see from the title, that says, I guess it says preview, the text is actually behind the subject. And we're going to show you how to do that right now, as well as add things like the headlines and why certain headlines are more important than others. So in this image right here, we have a very simple, solid background. And if we go over to our text tool and we type out the word, let's type out the word treats, and we're going to make it a lot bigger, and we can choose a font. I'm going to choose my Hobo font. Helps if I spell it correctly. And as you can see, it's not behind Justine. So what we can do, we can head over to our layers palette and just click and drag this layer down right below this layer, and as you can see, it is now behind her. Now I'm going to quickly change the font to, let's say, Papyrus. Now if you don't know Justine and you haven't watched Justine's videos, you'll have no idea why I just changed the font to Papyrus. But if you're doing anything in design or you're planning to, never use Papyrus. You'll get nowhere in life. So anyways, just a little side note. I'm going to change it back. Okay, so we have now a very simple title behind the subject, and I'm going to give this magazine a little bit of depth. I'm going to select Justine's layer. I'm going to head up to the top and click on Layer, Layer Style, and then Drop Shadow. I'm going to add a drop shadow to Justine, and the angle right over here determines which direction the drop shadow comes from. So it's set right now to 30 degrees, so it's coming from the right going down to the left. I'm going to increase the distance to pull it out from the subject, and I'm going to increase the size so it's not as sharp. Then I'm going to decrease the opacity just a little bit. Press OK. As you notice, it has a little bit of depth to the image now, which is kind of nice. Now if we look at our example, you'll notice that, and if you look at any sort of magazine, you'll notice that certain headlines appear bigger and bolder. That's because those headlines are meant to catch your eye. It's directing you towards the featured articles of the magazine. And in this case, it's this title right here, this headline, Best Dressed 2006. It's the biggest and boldest headline. It's right at the top left, which is the direction people read, and it just stands out a lot. So when you're designing your magazine, you want to focus on one headline first and then move down towards the other ones. Because if you look at this magazine, you have the big bold one here, then it gets a little bit smaller and lighter. So it's really telling you to focus on certain articles. So we're going to very quickly create a headline. We're going to use a yellow color, and we're just going to copy that one. We're going to type the word best, and we're not going to use Papyrus. We're going to use, let's say, Arial Black. Nice and bold. We're going to make it a little bit smaller, and we're going to position it right around here. And for the next line, we're going to make it a little bit narrower. As you can tell, it's a little bit narrower, and the font is a little bit different. So we're going to duplicate this. We're going to type in the word dressed. We're going to make it black. And we're going to change the font. I'm going to change it to Times and make it a tiny bit smaller. Now, one thing you should pay attention to is the color scheme. Now, black in this case is probably not the best choice because my black background is black. I'm going to very quickly change the background to a color, a gradient similar to what we have on the example. Just like so. And there we go. So now it's a little bit better, a little bit easier to see. And we're going to very quickly do the next line, which is 2006. And I'm going to increase the font just a little bit. So as you can tell, we have our first headline created. It's pretty big, it's pretty bold, it's not perfect. There's a lot of time and effort that you need to put into determining which fonts you're going to use and which colors. Now let me stress one thing. If you're using a font or a color that blends a little bit with the background or something like that, it's always good to use a drop shadow. Now let's say this best font, this best title, headline, whatever you want to call it, is down here. And because the shirt is yellow as well, it blends a little bit too much, it strains the eye. We can go up to the top layer style, drop shadow, and add a drop shadow. I'm going to turn the size down to 0 to make it very sharp, and the distance down to 1 or 2. And as you notice, it has now separated the text from the background. So we can actually put it over top of the shirt and it will be easy to read. So that's one thing to consider. You definitely want to look at your color scheme and make sure things don't blend too much. Make sure there's a nice contrast and that sort of thing. And one more thing before I finish. There's a few things on a magazine cover that are pretty essential, such as the barcode at the bottom right and the date and issue number at the top left or the top right. And when you're dealing with headlines, don't clutter them too much. You want them easily read, and you want them you don't want too many of them. You want maybe maximum 4 on each side. As you can see here, we have 3 and we have 4 over here and 1 at the bottom. So don't clutter it too much. But basically, there's a lot of effort and time put into creating magazine covers, and in front of us, it's not that great. There's a lot more that needs to be done, but I'm giving you a basic idea of how they are created, and if you do spend a little bit more time, you can get something that looks similar to this. This was done in around half an hour maybe, and even if I put even more effort, it'll look even better and better as you play with the fonts and the colors and things like that. It'll just end up looking a lot better. So I hope you picked up some tips in this tutorial. I hope you apply these to your projects. Definitely check out Justine at tastyblogsnack.com or at youtube.com/iJustine. And thank you again to Justine for allowing me to use these photos. So, that's it for the magazine tutorial. I hope you apply these to your project. I'd love to see some examples. Post them as video responses. If you're on YouTube, rate the video, comment the video, subscribe to the channel. And until next time, this is Howard from IceFlow Studios. Take care.